Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Startup Playbook TV. I'm your host Rohit Bhargava, and today I'll be chatting to Allie Hilmer, who's the founder of Zippy Crowd. Today we'll be talking about how to get advisors and mentors for your startup, how to get PR exposure for your business, and deciding between angel investors and VCs. Welcome to Startup Playbook TV, and thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Hi Rohit, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So for those people watching at home, do you want to share a little bit about your story and what you're working on at the moment?
I'm working on a startup. We're bootstrapping. My startup is called Zippy Crowd. It is a platform that allows people, especially young people, millennials, to promote diverse sets of skills, talents, hobbies, and get leads through friends' recommendations. So basically it is a digitally streamlined word of mouth, and it helps everybody sort of to bring their profiles from a variety of networks into one space, to start with nothing or very little, and to make sure that they don't lose those incredible skills and talents that they develop through life.
Fantastic. What sort of stage is Zippy Crowd at the moment?
We have built an MVP. It's built in Ruby on Rails. Mm-hmm. I have to say that my background is non-techie, so for me personally it's a huge achievement. My current tech partners said that our code is solid, it's very scalable, it's functional, has a few bugs, glitches, front end is still crap, but people are joining, and we are now going to the next stage. We built revenue model B2B, and we're looking at collaborating with universities, corporates, and going through investment rounds.
Fantastic. Sounds exciting.
It's super exciting. I have never worked more in my life. I've never been happier. Working 60-hour week like everybody else, earning nothing, but being like thrilled with what I do.
Fantastic.
Love it.
So you want to talk about a couple of things today?
Yes, thank you really for the opportunity to ask questions, because I've got gazillion of questions.
Yeah.
But I picked the 3 that are most sort of relevant to our stage now. We're in the process of putting a board of advisors. What's the reasonable number of advisors for an early stage startup, and how do you attract and retain? What do you offer apart from, passion and product?
Sure, that's a really good question. So when you say a board of advisors, are you looking like what?
It's a formal word, but a group of
Sure. So
people.
A group of people that you want to do what with? Like,
it's a group of people who know much more than I do, which is not that difficult because I've reached the stage when I need experts. And it's a group of people who could be a bit of a sounding board, a bit of a connecting kind of board, people who have experience, who are able to open the doors or to create connections that are difficult to create generally, and who would be inspired with what we do and promote Zippy Crowd as well.
Sure. And what's the main sort of trouble that you're finding? Is it finding the right people? Is it keeping them engaged? What is it specifically?
Look, in the past I was a very good recruiter and educator, etc. I can go through LinkedIn and through Angel List and find people, but I'm not sure what's the best way to approach. What do I ask from them? What's the commitment that startups generally should expect from advisor? Is there any share sort of equity that's supposed to be offered? What type of people like being advisors with startups like ours?
Sure.
Makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So personally, I'm a huge believer in having sort of mentors, advisory board members, like whatever you want to call it, people around you who you can bounce things off. It's very easy to be, so stuck in the day-to-day grind of running the business that it's hard to sometimes see the bigger picture, and you kind of run into issues that you think are really big and you don't really know how to deal with them. So it's good having someone who's had experience that can, talk you through at least what they've done and what's kind of worked for them. In terms of sort of finding the right people, I generally, an advisor or a mentor, it's a little bit based on, you know, what is it specifically that you're looking for. So, you know, are there key areas within the industry or the business model, or even experience in running startups? So my first step is always, you know, if I'm looking for someone specifically, it's what are the things that I'm lacking, or us as a startup team are lacking, that we need to help us kind of navigate some of the challenges that are coming up. And what you'll find is that those things change and evolve over time. So the challenges that you have at the start won't be the same as you know when you're scaling a company and when you go through kind of a different phase. So it's always a matter of, you know, who are people that have kind of been there and done that within a specific area that you can kind of learn from. Also, I think when it comes to mentors, a lot of people, I've been on both sides of this. So you know, I've had a lot of mentors. I've been part of programs where I've been assigned a mentee. I think for the most part, the best like mentor advisory board relationships work when there's really good connection and relationship between you and that particular person. So all of the mentors that I've had mentors for every startup that I've started. All of the mentors that I've had, I've never had to ask them, will you be my mentor? Will you be part of my advisory team? It's always been, we've crossed paths. They've been really interested in what I've worked in. We just got along, and, you know, I would just ask them questions. I really valued the advice that they gave, and, you know, I would keep going back to them for questions. So, you know, I think a lot of those sort of relationships evolve naturally.
Yes.
I think, again, every situation is different. Like, you know, I've seen people successfully form a really strong advisory board team and offer them a little bit of equity. I personally haven't offered any equity to any of the mentors or advisors that I've had, because for me, you know, when you have a mentor, it should be someone who you can literally pick up the phone at any time, whenever you're having any issue, and be able to talk it through to them. And that shouldn't necessarily be based on a reward system. You know, from doing the podcast, from like, you know, meeting a lot of different people, and from having my own mentors, I find that a lot of people are really wanting to give back. They just want to make sure, you know, people have limited time, and they want to make sure that they give it to the right person that fits in with, you know, with their values, with, you know, things that they're interested in, with those sort of things as well. So although, you know, it might be really, you know, for you to get a really big name on board, it might be really big for you. Something that might actually be more valuable is someone who, you know, really connects with you and your business on a personal level, and is willing to go that extra step rather than
big name.
So there's no right or wrong way of doing that, but I feel that the best kind of relationships are when, you know, both sides of the table are getting value. And to be honest, like, I mean, most people want to surround themselves with really passionate people that are kind of, you know, fitting in with what they sort of align with. So I think it's just a matter of finding people that you just kind of connect with, that you can kind of learn from and bounce things from.
That helps, because I do have a few people who are sort of like sounding board, but all my contacts are from oil, gas and mining industry, so it's slightly not relevant what I'm doing now. And building new relationships and asking people to help with advice. I felt maybe I'm not rewarding enough, you know, it's my idea, my passion, it's their time, so maybe I should offer something, you know, futures. I think one thing that I would say from like those sort of relationships is you want to show progress, and you want to, you know, people are willing to make time if they want to see that, you know, if they're giving you feedback, if they're giving you time, that you take that on board. Yeah. Not that you know, we were talking about this before we turned on the mic, that not that everyone that gives you advice is always right, or that you should action on every advice, but you know, they want to make sure that if they're spending the time with you to kind of work on things, and then if you catch up again in a fortnight or in a month or 6 months from now, that you've been able to progress and you don't have the same questions, and, you know, things are moving in an upward trajectory rather than kind of stagnating and going through the same things over and over again. That makes total sense. Thanks. Great. Appreciate.
Great. Anything else?
Absolutely. Another question that I had was about exposure. I've been through the stage where I was going to a lot of meetups and kind of building network and relationships in the right space, and then I simply ran out of time because we needed to continue build the product and the revenue model. And at the time I was getting very conflicting advice. Half of the people were saying you need to launch, you must launch, you need to get exposure, etc., etc. The other half were saying don't launch, just keep doing what you're doing, focus all your energy on your product. What's your advice? We are bootstrapping startup. Obviously, I can't pay, for advertising yet, etc. How do I get the maximum media exposure? Do I need to launch, or do I do other things? I mean, I'm here, obviously, but.
Sure. So one thing I would push back on you with that is what are you hoping to get out of media exposure?
Well, to be honest, I've been working on Zippy Crowd for 2 years now, so I'm very proud we have MVP, and a lot of things are happening, even though they're happening slowly. At the same time, I'm a subscriber to a variety of startup publications, so I keep reading, exciting this startup, exciting that startup, female this, founders, etc. We are not mentioned anywhere purely because I haven't created that opportunity, and sometimes maybe it's my ego, I don't know, but I think it would be good if I had some mentions about Zippy Crowd. It would make probably my life easier when I go to discuss B2B model with the universities or corporates, that hey, people know about us, not just our users but outside.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just taking a step back, I think PR as a tactic to get more exposure or customers, again, can work. I've just seen a lot of startups that have chased PR for being featured in a publication, but that not really resulting in any movement for their business.
That's what I felt. That's why I didn't.
So StageLabel, for example, my previous startup, we were named as one of the top 10 startups to watch in 2014. Great, it was really big for us. We kind of used that as a way of kind of building up credibility both within the startup space and within the fashion industry that we were kind of working with. But just because we got featured in that list didn't mean that we would be successful, and didn't really tangibly result in any additional customers or anything like that for us. So I would say, especially when you're bootstrapped, you've just got to. I'm a really big fan of focus on building a business, and good things will happen. So if you're spending time chasing PR opportunities that may not result in customers, is it the right use of your time as a tactic? But in terms of, so if PR is a tactic for you to gain additional credibility in the space, so you can then go to universities and do things like that, I think the way that you get in front of the media is put yourself out there, have a really compelling story to tell. So you look at every single publication, it's very competitive online. There's so much content that's being pushed out. Everyone wants something different. Everyone wants a slightly different story to tell. And so more often than not, what people sort of focus on is hey, look at my amazing startup, you should be writing about us. But from a media publication perspective, no one's really going to, if you're just hearing about Zippy Crowd, for example, for the first time, you're not just going to click on an article just because it says Zippy Crowd. Yeah. People click on stories, they click on something that kind of connects with them. There's a deeper sort of thing, which is why when you look at a lot of the startups that get featured in the main sort of publications like the Financial Review and the Australian and things like that, as well as Startup Smart and Startup Daily, a lot of it is based off case studies of what happened when a customer used their product and what it meant, overall as changing a dynamic, or talking about sort of the female leaders and what's kind of happening. I would look at what are different angles that you can take of an interesting story that you can tell, that you can then pitch to Startup Smart, Startup Daily, or to editors out there.
Can it be the angle? Sorry, I'm interrupting, but it's sitting on my mind. Can it be an angle how I became entrepreneur?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, anything that's interesting. So most people will click on articles that they think will, give them some level of information. So either that's funding. So who did they raise funding from? How did they do it? Everyone. That's why there are a lot of articles that are written about funding and launches, because they're kind of big milestones and they're kind of the success markers of our industry, for right or wrong. But other aspects of how I became an entrepreneur.
Okay.
You can talk about your challenges of kind of potentially moving from from the corporate space into startups, which a lot of people can relate to, or even, again, we were talking about this earlier about, starting a startup later in life as well, and some of the challenges that you kind of have, or even starting as a non-tech founder. There are different things that other people will relate to, and again, it's not you're not selling Zippy Crowd, you're selling the story behind that.
Okay.
But you being associated with that gives you the additional kind of exposure that kind of comes with that. So it's all about how you tell that story, and what is it that, from a media publications perspective, what would they want to write about that will get them additional clicks.
I do have a story actually, because I gave myself a challenge at 50 to learn rollerblading before. That was my test. If I can teach myself to rollerblade, I'm non-sporty, alright? So that's a big challenge. Then I can do a tech startup. And I watched YouTube, I bought rollerblades, I went to Albert Park, and I fell, and I became local, kind of known crawling kind of rollerblading middle-aged person, and 3 months later I could rollerblade, so I thought I can do it.
Fantastic. So you heard it here first.
Yeah, I zipped it.
Yeah, but no, absolutely. Like, I mean, so again, for the podcast, for example, one of the things that I did was I reached out to Startup Smart and said, so this is a tactic that I've used previously, is give people exclusives. So again, that media publications are often fighting for information, or fighting to write out information first. So I said that, I'm launching a podcast featuring people like Justin Dry from Vinomofo, a few other sort of investors and those sort of things. I would love to give you an exclusive, exclusive articles that I write about the podcast launch and those sort of things, and what's kind of coming around that. And they said yes, So again, reverse engineer, like who is it that you're trying to reach? What do they want?
Got it.
And then how can you deliver that to them in a way that is compelling for them to want to say yes, rather than saying, this is my story and I want to get it out in this particular way. People are always willing to say yes. And that comes back to mentors as well, right? Like you might want to get a certain mentor, but you could just go up to them and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Chances are they're going to say no the first time. But if you go and offer them value, if you go and give them, a different insight into the startup that you're working on, or especially if they come from that industry. So, at StageLabel, we, who are our mentors? Our mentors were Phil Bosworth, who was the co-founder and CEO of LifeX, which was Australia's most successful crowdfunding campaign at that time. They raised like 1.2 million in 3 days. I met him at a startup weekend competition, and he literally just said, I hear you're working on a crowdfunding thing, tell me about it. And we, developed a relationship from that. We reached out to a person who was a head lecturer at one of the fashion schools, and she was the head of one of the fashion associations. Reached out to her and said, we're doing something that helps students. We'd love for you to be kind of part of this. Can we discuss and talk about, how we can kind of leverage off each other. And the third person was someone who is literally started the fashion industry in Australia 20 years ago. She started Fashion Week in Sydney 20 years ago. And again, we kind of reached out to her and we said, we're doing something innovative in the fashion space. We know that you were one of the first kind of innovators.
But everybody loves fashion.
Exactly. Well,
fashion sells.
Yeah, I mean, you want to play a little bit to people's ego. Everyone likes thinking that they can help.
Yeah.
Especially when it's something interesting and compelling and something that they're already interested in. It's a different way of doing things. So, the first part is don't be afraid to reach out to people. And just make sure that you offer them value.
Yeah.
And if you offer people value, everyone wants to be involved or help or.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Third question, and the last one: angel investors or VCs? It's a very quick question. I personally kind of believe that the angel investors probably take your business closer to that. Am I the right thinking like that, or it doesn't matter?
So I mean, obviously, angel investors are individuals who will put in their own money into a business. So the check size will always be smaller than what you'll get from an institutional, venture capital fund. So the chances are that for you to get the first money in that isn't friends and family, it will most likely be from angel investors. So most VCs, most VCs won't. Again, it depends, but most VCs generally write bigger checks, which means that your business has to be at a certain point. for them to want to look at investing. In terms of more broadly, like whether it's angel investors or VCs, and I did a podcast interview with Nick Crocker, who's a venture partner at Blackbird recently, and he mentioned that one of the questions that I asked him was, what should startup founders look for in investors? And he said, the same way that investors do due diligence on a startup, you should also be doing due diligence on the investors. So, have a look at what have they invested in previously, when was the last time that they invested, talk to the companies that they actually invested in as well. That's a really good marker of, what were they actually like to work with. Again, for really good startups, all of the VCs want to fight to put money into that business. But what happens, again, it's easy to put the money in, but what happens afterwards? What's that relationship like? How much should they help?
Yes.
How much, when things weren't going to plan, how supportive were they? How understanding were they? Did they have your back? So I think what you'll find as an early stage startup is that more often than not, angel investing will probably, after the friends and family round, angel investing will probably be your next stop, unless if things have just accelerated really, really quickly. Again, you might get some VCs interested, but I think the broader question is more, who are the right people to kind of join your team? I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. So again, with StageLabel, something that I haven't kind of talked about that often is we actually turned down investment opportunities 3 times from 3 different people.
That's a good feeling. I did it once only.
Yeah,
so 2 more to
it's
go.
the first one literally happened at Startup Weekend. They were a mentor at the weekend, and they offered us money, and I really didn't like the advice that they gave, and so I was like, that doesn't fit.
Best thing you've done, probably.
And it's just, if you have an interesting value proposition and you have a business that's actually working, people will want to be involved. But as soon as you take money from someone, they're part of your team. Whether they're a co-founder or whatever, there's someone that is, part of the culture and the fabric of the startup that you're building. So it's really important, as you would hopefully with the people that you're bringing on as co-founders in the business, you want to vet the investors that you bring on.
Definitely
well.
don't want anyone to change culture, to add to it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Rohit, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem
Great.
at all. Hope that was helpful. So for anyone that wants to get in touch, say hello, sign up to Zippy Crowd, what's the best way for them to do that?
Guys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, please go to zippycrowd.com. Takes a second, put whatever skills you have, just showcase them, shoot me a message, talk to me. If you want to join the team or want to support me, I'm your best entrepreneur. I never give up.
Cool. And if there are any people that want to chat to you about joining up as advisors or helping get media contacts, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Mobile number or email. Shall I read them?
We'll put your email address in the show notes.
If you Google Allie Hilmer, my numbers, my email address is Zippy Crowd. It's all there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure that's in there.
Actually talk to Rohit.
Sounds good. Ali, thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with everything.
Appreciate it.
Yes.